The space station called Haven 47 floated quietly at the edge of a distant star system. It was not beautiful like the shining capital worlds, nor busy like the trade hubs filled with ships and noise. Haven 47 was practical. It was built after a long war that had nearly destroyed several civilizations. The station existed because humans believed even broken places deserved a second chance. Most aliens did not understand humans. Some feared them, others respected them. Many simply watched them carefully, unsure whether humans were reckless heroes or unpredictable troublemakers. Among the long metal corridors of Haven 47 lived a human named Elas Rowan. He worked as a structural engineer, repairing damaged sections of the station and improving systems that others ignored. He lived alone in a modest apartment near the outer ring, where the artificial lights dimmed to simulate a peaceful evening. Elas preferred quiet. He spoke politely but rarely joined social gatherings. Other residents knew him as dependable and calm. Some whispered that he had been a soldier during the war, though he never confirmed it. One evening, after returning from work, Elas found a message waiting at his door terminal. It informed him that a domestic assistant had been assigned to his residence according to new station regulations designed to provide employment for displaced alien populations. He frowned slightly but accepted. Humans were often involved in integration programs, and he understood why the station council pushed these initiatives. The door slid open a few minutes later. Standing there was a small alien woman. Her species was known as the Kyle. They were slender, with smooth silver skin and eyes that reflected light like polished glass. Their movements were precise, almost overly careful, as if they were always afraid of making a mistake. She kept her head lowered. "I am designated Service Unit Lyra," she said softly. "Assigned as domestic maintenance and assistance." Elas noticed the tension in her posture immediately. She looked like someone waiting for punishment. "You can come in," he said gently, stepping aside. She entered slowly, scanning the room with cautious eyes. Everything about her behavior suggested training, strict, controlled, obedient. Elas felt a familiar discomfort in his chest. He had seen this before during the war, people who had learned to hide themselves just to survive. "You don't have to call yourself a unit," he said after a moment. "What name do you prefer?" She hesitated. The silence stretched long enough that Elas wondered if he had made a mistake. "Lyra is acceptable," she finally replied. He nodded. "All right, Lyra, I'm Elas." She blinked slightly, as if surprised by the introduction. Most species in hierarchical cultures did not exchange names with servants. Elas walked toward the kitchen area and placed his tools on the counter. "First thing, you're not required to stand all the time. Sit if you want." She remained still. "I can stand," she said quickly. "I know you can," he answered, "but you don't have to." The words seemed to confuse her more than orders would have. Over the next hour, Lyra quietly cleaned and organized the apartment. She moved with impressive efficiency, rarely making a sound. Every action was calculated, perfect. Elas watched her occasionally while preparing a simple meal. When he placed 2 plates on the table, she froze. "This is for you," he said. Her eyes widened. "Service units do not eat with owners." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not your owner, and humans usually eat together. It's more comfortable." She looked uncertain but slowly approached. The first bite she took seemed to surprise her. "Flavor balance is pleasant," she said carefully. Elas laughed softly. "That's one way to say you like it." The sound of laughter made her shoulders relax slightly. Conversation was slow at first. She answered questions with short responses, clearly afraid of saying something wrong. But Elas did not pressure her. He talked about his work instead, repairing gravity stabilizers, replacing damaged panels, teaching young technicians. Gradually, she began asking questions. "Humans share food with all?" she asked. "Most of us do," he said. "Food's better when you don't eat alone." That answer seemed to stay with her. As days passed, a routine formed. Lyra cleaned and maintained the apartment, but Elas treated her as a guest rather than staff. He thanked her after every task. He asked for her opinions. He allowed her to choose music during evening hours. The first time he handed her a datapad filled with human songs, she stared at it as if it were a sacred object. "You want me to choose?" she asked. "Sure." "Surprise me." She selected something soft and melodic. They listened together without speaking. For Lyra, the silence felt different from the silence she knew before. It was not tense or fearful. It was calm. One evening, Elas noticed her watching him closely while he repaired a small drone. "You're curious," he said. "I am observing," she replied quickly. "Same thing sometimes." He handed her a tool. "Want to try?" She hesitated, then carefully accepted it. He guided her through the process slowly, explaining each step. When she successfully fixed the connection, her eyes brightened faintly. "You did that," he said. Her posture straightened with quiet pride. It was a small moment, but for Lyra it felt enormous. She had never been encouraged to learn outside her assigned duties. Nights became their shared time. After work, Elas would sit with her and tell stories about Earth, about oceans, storms, old cities, and strange traditions. Sometimes he read from books. Sometimes he showed her historical recordings. She listened intensely. Humans fascinated her because they spoke about failure without shame. They joked about mistakes. They valued choice. Her own culture had never allowed such freedom. Weeks passed. Lyra began to move more naturally around the apartment. Her voice grew slightly warmer. She occasionally offered suggestions rather than waiting for commands. One evening, after a long day, Elas noticed she seemed unusually quiet. "Something wrong?" he asked. She hesitated. "Inspection teams arrive tomorrow," he nodded slowly. The station often checked integration assignments. "They evaluate performance," she continued, "if unsatisfactory reassignment occurs." "Are you worried?" he asked. Her gaze dropped. "I do not wish reassignment." The honesty surprised both of them. Elas smiled gently. "Then we'll make sure everything's fine." That night, he chose to tell her a story about human resilience, about people rebuilding after disasters, about communities supporting each other even when everything seemed lost. Lyra listened more closely than ever. When the story ended, silence filled the room. She looked down at her hands, then slowly lifted her gaze. "Can we do it again tonight, please?" The words came out softly, almost like a confession. Elas tilted his head. "The stories?" "Yes." He smiled. "Of course." Relief washed over her features, subtle but undeniable. For the first time since arriving on Haven 47, Lyra felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not duty, but anticipation. And as the artificial night lights dimmed around them, she realized that what she was asking for was not just stories. She was asking for connection, something her people had forgotten, and something humans seemed to give freely without even realizing its power. The next morning arrived too quickly for Lyra. She woke earlier than usual, standing near the window where artificial sunlight slowly filled the apartment. Haven 47's outer ring always felt quieter at this hour. Ships moved like distant stars outside the transparent shield, and maintenance drones glided silently between metal beams. Her thoughts were heavy. Inspection teams. The words repeated inside her mind like a warning. In her previous life, inspections meant judgment. They meant evaluation without kindness. They meant reassignment, correction, or worse. She glanced toward the hallway where Elas' room was located. The door remained closed. Humans slept deeply compared to her species, but she knew he would wake soon. She began preparing the morning area, organizing everything carefully. Every object was aligned. Every surface cleaned twice. She checked the schedule again and again. When Elas finally walked into the main room, he noticed her stiff posture immediately. "You didn't sleep much," he said gently. "I am operational," she replied quickly. He gave her a small smile, recognizing avoidance when he saw it. "You don't need to impress anyone," he said. "Just be yourself." She did not answer. Being herself had never been allowed before. The station announcement echoed softly through the walls, signaling the arrival of official personnel. Her shoulders tightened. Elas calmly poured 2 cups of warm tea and handed one to her. She accepted it automatically but hesitated before drinking. "Humans drink during inspections?" she asked quietly. "Humans drink during everything," he said with a light laugh. A small sound escaped her, almost like a faint imitation of laughter, before she quickly controlled herself. The door chimed. 3 figures entered after Elas granted access. 2 were alien administrators wearing neutral gray uniforms, their expressions professional and distant. The third was a human officer holding a datapad. They began observing immediately. Questions followed. Is the assigned unit performing efficiently? Are domestic duties completed according to protocol? Any signs of behavioral irregularity? Lyra answered with short, precise sentences, her voice returning to the formal tone she once used constantly. Elas responded calmly, emphasizing cooperation and improvement. The administrators scanned the apartment, noting details. One paused near the dining table. "Shared meals?" the alien asked. "Yes," Elias said simply. The administrator's eyes narrowed slightly. "Unusual." "It works," Elias replied. They made notes. Lyra felt her internal systems tighten with anxiety. She waited for correction or disapproval. Instead, the inspection continued without comment. Then one administrator turned toward her. "Are you satisfied with your assignment?" The question stunned her. Servants were rarely asked such things. She hesitated. Her instinct was to give a neutral answer, but she remembered the stories Elias told, stories about humans valuing truth. "I wish to remain," she said quietly. The administrators exchanged a glance. The human officer looked thoughtful but did not interrupt. After another series of scans and questions, the inspection team finally left. The door closed. Silence filled the apartment. Lyra exhaled slowly, her body relaxing for the first time that day. "You did fine," Elias said gently. "I nearly failed," she replied. "No," he said, "you were honest." She looked at him as if honesty were something fragile and rare. Later that evening, they returned to their usual routine. Elias finished his work earlier than expected and brought a small device into the living area. "What is that?" she asked. "Old human entertainment system," he said. "Shows recorded stories." He activated it, projecting a scene across the wall, humans gathered around a fire, telling stories under a sky full of stars. Lyra watched in fascination. "These humans appear relaxed despite environmental risk," she observed. "That's humans," Elias said. "We like stories more than safety sometimes." She tilted her head slightly. "Stories change emotional state," she said slowly. "They do," he replied. They watched together for a while, the soft glow of the projection reflecting in her eyes. Eventually, Elias paused the recording. "Your turn," he said. "My turn? Tell me something from your world." She froze. No one had ever asked her to share personal memories. After a long pause, she spoke. "My species values order, efficiency, emotional restraint." "That sounds heavy," he said. "It is stable," she corrected automatically. He nodded but did not argue. She continued slowly, describing long halls filled with silent workers, strict schedules, and a culture where roles were assigned at birth. She explained that asking questions was discouraged and personal desires were considered distractions. Elias listened carefully. "That must have been lonely," he said softly. The word surprised her. Lonely. She had never described it that way, but something inside her recognized the truth. "Yes," she whispered. Over the following days, something changed between them. Lyra began initiating conversations. She asked about human customs, emotions, and relationships. She observed how Elias reacted to stress with humor instead of fear. She noticed how he valued rest, creativity, and choice. Her movements became less rigid. Her voice gained warmth. One afternoon, while organizing supplies, she accidentally dropped a glass container. It shattered across the floor. She froze, her breath quickened. In her old life, mistakes resulted in punishment. She waited. Elias stepped forward calmly, grabbed a cleaning tool, and began helping her pick up the pieces. "Accidents happen," he said. She stared at him. "You are not displeased?" "It's just glass," he replied. The simplicity of the answer struck her deeply. That evening, during their storytelling ritual, she laughed openly for the first time. The sound startled both of them. She quickly covered her mouth. "You don't have to hide it," Elias said gently. Her eyes shone with something new, relief mixed with wonder. Outside their apartment, rumors began spreading. Other residents noticed the difference in Lyra's posture and behavior. Some whispered that humans changed those around them. Some admired it. Others felt uneasy. Reports reached certain authorities suggesting that human practices were disrupting traditional social structures. Lyra sensed tension but did not understand its full meaning. One night after a particularly long story session, she hesitated before speaking. "Can we repeat this tomorrow?" she asked. "The stories?" Elias replied. "Yes," he smiled. "Of course." She felt warmth spread through her chest, a sensation she still struggled to identify. Safety, belonging, choice. For the first time in her life, she was not counting hours until duty ended. She was counting moments until they began again. And though she did not fully understand it yet, Lyra realized that humanity's greatest strength was not force or technology. It was the way humans made others feel seen. Life on Haven 47 did not remain quiet for long. After the inspection team left, subtle changes began to spread through the station. Some residents watched Lyra differently. Others avoided her. A few greeted her with curiosity instead of indifference. She noticed everything. Her species had trained her to observe small signals, shifts in tone, posture, distance. Something was happening beneath the surface. One evening, while returning from a supply run, she heard two alien workers speaking near a corridor junction. The human treats her like an equal. That disrupts order. They say others have started requesting similar arrangements. Their voices lowered as she approached, but the words had already reached her. She walked back to the apartment slowly, processing what she heard. Inside, Elas was repairing a small environmental unit. He looked up and immediately noticed her tension. "Something wrong?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Others believe your behavior creates instability." He leaned back against the wall, thinking for a moment. "Change often feels unstable at first," he said. "But instability is dangerous," she replied automatically. "Sometimes," he said, "but sometimes it's how things get better." She stood silently, considering his words. Later that night, during their usual storytelling time, she seemed distracted. Elas told a story about early human explorers who crossed oceans without knowing what waited on the other side. He described fear and hope existing together. "Why risk so much?" she asked. "Because staying the same forever can be its own kind of danger," he answered. The idea stayed with her long after the conversation ended. Days later, another message arrived at Elas' terminal, official notice. He read it quietly, then exhaled slowly. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "Council review," he said. "They want to discuss integration practices." Her body stiffened. "Is reassignment probable?" "I don't know," he admitted honestly. The uncertainty felt heavier than any direct threat. When the day arrived, they traveled together to the central administrative level. The council chamber was large and cold, filled with representatives from multiple species. Lights reflected across polished surfaces, making the room feel distant and formal. Lyra stood behind Elas, unsure where she was expected to position herself. "Stand wherever you're comfortable," he whispered. Comfortable. The word still felt unfamiliar. The council began with formal statements about cultural balance and stability. Some members expressed concern that human customs encouraged emotional independence among servant classes, potentially challenging long-standing traditions. One alien representative spoke firmly. "Hierarchy maintains order. Rapid social change creates risk." Elas listened patiently before responding. "Humans believe choice creates stronger cooperation," he said calmly. "When people choose to stay, they give more of themselves." The council turned toward Lyra. "Do you feel pressured to remain in this arrangement?" one member asked. Her mind raced. She remembered her first day standing at the doorway, afraid to move. She remembered shared meals, laughter, learning stories. She remembered fixing the drone and feeling pride. "No," she said slowly. "I remain because I wish to remain." The chamber grew quiet. Another council member leaned forward. "Do you consider yourself property under this arrangement?" The question struck deep. She thought carefully. "I consider myself respected," she said. The answer seemed to surprise several representatives. Discussion continued for a long time. Some members argued that human influence could destabilize cultural norms. Others argued that new partnerships between species had already improved station morale. Finally, the council concluded that no policy violations had occurred. The meeting ended. Outside the chamber, Lyra felt lightheaded. "You spoke well," Elas said softly. "I spoke truth," she replied. They walked back through the station together. The corridors felt different now, not threatening, but uncertain, like standing at the edge of a new path. That evening, she initiated their storytelling ritual before he even suggested it. "I wish to hear another human story," she said. He smiled. "What kind?" "One where change succeeds," he laughed gently. "That's most of them." Weeks passed. News of the council review spread. Some residents began approaching Lyra with questions about human customs. A young alien technician asked how humans learned without fear of failure. Another asked why shared meals felt meaningful. Lyra answered carefully, repeating lessons she had learned from Elas. "Humans believe mistakes are steps forward," she said once, surprising herself with how natural the words felt. She realized she was changing too, not losing her identity, but expanding it. One evening, while walking through a market corridor, she saw another member of her species working silently under strict supervision. The familiar posture of fear struck her deeply. For the first time, she approached without hesitation. "You may rest your shoulders," she whispered gently. "It is allowed here." The other Chiral looked shocked, but the small interaction stayed with Lyra long after. Back in the apartment, Elias watched her thoughtfully. "You're helping others now," he said. She tilted her head. "Is that human behavior?" "It's good behavior," he replied. The station slowly began to change. Shared spaces became more lively. Mixed species gatherings increased. Some resisted, but many embraced the new energy. One night, after a particularly long conversation about Earth's history, Lyra sat quietly for several minutes. "There is something I must understand," she said finally. "Okay. Why did you treat me differently from the beginning?" He thought carefully before answering. "Because you're a person," he said simply. "That's enough." The simplicity of the answer moved her more than any long explanation could. Artificial night settled across Haven 47, lights dimming to soft gold. Outside the window, stars drifted slowly, silent witnesses to countless stories. Lyra felt a calm she had never known before. She turned toward Elias, her voice softer than usual. "Can we do it again tonight, please?" He smiled warmly. "Always." And as he began another story, about humans who changed galaxies not with power but with kindness, she realized that her life had transformed completely. She was no longer waiting for orders. She was choosing her path. Humanity's strength was not just survival or courage. It was the ability to help others rediscover themselves. And in that quiet apartment on the edge of a distant star system, two very different beings continued sharing stories, building something stronger than tradition, stronger than fear. A future shaped by understanding. One story at a time,